Sherman, welcome.
All right.
Hi. Sorry to keep
Sorry
you.
about that.
Oh, you didn't do anything wrong. I was actually coming out from another meeting at our senior center, our social hour. I was sharing out with folks information about the 6th Avenue and Geary affordable housing, senior affordable housing project, which they were very interested in. So I might suggest we wait for another minute or two, see if other folks are joining us. And either way, we'll record it and share it out with all of our clients via our newsletter and our WeChat group.
Absolutely, no problem.
Cool.
Are we still going to need a translator? Because he's running a little late.
I think we'll be okay. I don't think, like I said, I didn't see anybody who'd RSVP'd that I knew needed interpretation in Cantonese.
Okay, sounds good. If they do, he'll probably be logging in on the same link that you sent me, because I forwarded it to him. So he may try to log in. So if we need to,
I'll admit him. Yeah.
All right, cool.
I appreciate you going to the effort of finding somebody to do that. I mean, I'd say about like 40% of our clients speak some Chinese dialect, mostly Cantonese.
Of course.
Yeah.
I completely understand.
Yeah. And I'm going to pull up my notes because we sent a survey out to some of our clients and staff and asked them, what did they most want to hear about from candidates like you?
Sure.
How's your week going so far?
It's doing pretty good, It's at work and, what can you do?
Yeah. You run a business?
Yeah, I'm the manager at the laundromat on Geary and 20th. Just a few blocks from you guys, actually.
Got it. Yeah.
You guys are on 23rd, right?
That is Jackie Chan Senior Center. We're on 26th Avenue, right across from the Russian Holy Virgin Church.
Oh, okay. So you know Walden Wong then?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Walden's my friend, so.
Oh, really? He teaches one of our most popular classes.
I know. He tells me about it all the time,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
He's been also teaching, in addition to his art classes, Photoshop lately, and that has been immensely popular.
He told me. He's really, you probably guys know, he's really good.
Yeah.
He helps me out like every year when we run.
Oh, yeah.
Just, it's always cool hanging out with Walden.
Yeah, he's a really talented artist too. And he's an excellent teacher. Like I've seen him at various points, like I've taught with youth before. And so like seeing him work and be very patient and showing techniques and feedback, it's just like actually quite impressive as a former educator. So yeah. Let's see. I'm going to pull up my notes here and then we can get started in a minute or two. Let's see.
Did you take over for the lady who used to run the senior center before?
Oh, are you talking about Kaleda?
I'm not sure what her name was. I know it's 4 years or 8 years ago. They had a supervisor event, and we had it actually at your facility.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I forget what her name was, but
it might have been either Linda or it's Mike. Okay. Yeah, Linda. She's not there anymore, but my boss, our director, her name is Kaleda Walling. My job is to do community engagement amongst a bunch of other things. So helping facilitate stuff like this.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean, she already had her hands full, but she has it even more full since the pandemic. So
yeah, I hear, but it's hard on everybody trying to coordinate stuff these days.
Yeah. Let me see. So I'm going to forward this to Linda. Research one more thing. right. Well, why don't we get started, Sherman, if that's okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So what I'm thinking for format is what we've done with all the other candidates so far is just asked you to start by pitching yourself, what you're about, what you're interested in, and then we have a couple questions from the survey that we sent out, and then if anybody else joins in, I'll poke them to ask any questions or share any comments with you. How does that sound?
All right, sounds like a plan.
Okay. All right, well, we'll take it away. Tell us about Sherman D'Silva.
All right, well, good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Sherman D'Silva, and I was actually born and grew up here, right here in the Richmond District. I went to Sutro, Presidio, and Wash, right here in the neighborhood. I currently work at a store in the Richmond District on 20th and Gary. And, I'm running because, as somebody who's lived here my entire life, I've seen the decline of the neighborhood. And I want us to kind of refocus on what we should have been doing all these years, is focusing on the neighborhood, making sure that the neighborhood is safe, making sure the neighborhood is clean, making sure that those basic things that we all have to deal with when we walk outside our house are being taken care of, making sure there's no trash on the street, making sure large items are removed off the sidewalk. These are the things that affect us on a daily basis. Every 4 years, during the supervisor race, they have a lot of big issues that come up that a lot of candidates use to divide the neighborhood. And unfortunately, a lot of these issues never get decided by the Board of Supervisors anyway. They get decided by being placed on the ballot. At least that's happened in the last two election cycles. And then the basic things that we all have to deal with here in the neighborhood, they just never get taken care of. So as supervisor, I'm going to be more local. I want to focus on making sure those basic things that you see every day when you go outside your house, those are taken care of first before we do any other things. And I want to make sure that the government's accessible to people here in the neighborhood. City Hall feels like a very far place way for those of us that are here in the Richmond District. I want to make sure that we have a presence here in the neighborhood where people can just walk in and get help to deal with problems with city departments or City Hall. So if elected, we'll have an office right here in the neighborhood, staffed by a staff member every day, so that if somebody needs help, they can at least come in and get information. We can assist them navigate through a lot of the challenges that occur when you have to deal with City Hall. So that's why I'm running, make the place, focus on making sure the place is clean, improving the quality of life here in the neighborhood, and making sure that everybody has access to the services provided by City Hall. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Sherman. One of our first questions is to ask you to share a bit about your values, core beliefs, and relevant experience that you would bring to the position.
So, I've not been in government. I have a lot of interactions with government. As a manager of a store, I have to deal with City Hall or city offices on an ongoing basis. But you're right. I'm not part of kind of the club that runs the city. So I'm not part of that club. And I think that's actually a good thing. It gives us it gives an insight and a perspective that that a lot of us have to deal with, but is not really represented on the Board of Supervisors. If you look up the makeup of the supervisors, there aren't a lot of like everyday people on there, people who have to work at the grocery store, or people who are driving a taxi cab. I work in customer service. I deal with customers on a regular basis. I have to deal with problems on an ongoing basis. And I think when you're making policy, I think sometimes you forget that your policy affects regular people. And I think if elected, that's what I bring to the board, is the perspective of the people who have to deal with the policies to make it more relevant and realistic when you're making policies, so that they're more relevant to the people that they're going to apply to.
Got it. And how would you work with your colleagues that sometimes you might have disagreements with?
Well, it would be a pretty boring place if we all agreed on everything, right? We can't all agree on everything. I think what it requires is everybody willing to meet somewhere in the middle. You know, my experience is uh, most issues, you know, what we hear are the two extremes, right? But the reality for most people is somewhere in the middle, right? Both sides want to present their side that is advantageous to their point of view, right? And I understand that, but as a representative, your job is to listen to both sides and get some impartial opinions to come up and craft a solution um, that is fair for everybody. Now, that fair means it's fair in the sense that everybody gets something, but not everybody gets everything, right? There's no way everybody's always going to be happy with everything that you come up with if you're trying to be fair, right? Because like a judge, when a judge has to make a decision, you know, somebody's going to be upset, but the judge's job is to make sure that the decisions that are made focus on fairness. And as supervisor, you know, I'm not looking to pick one side or the other. I understand that's the way city government operates here in San Francisco, and I'm not really happy with that. And I think most residents in San Francisco are not happy with that either. So I'm somebody who's in the middle. If you can convince me and show me facts that an issue is reasonable, then I'm okay. I'll work with that. Even if I come in with an opposing opinion, if you can demonstrate with facts that another course of action is more relevant, then I will change my mind. There's nothing that's etched in stone. My job is to listen to all the information, all the facts, and come up with like I said, a fair decision.
Got it. Um, One of the issues, I mean, this is going to be a question even before COVID, but especially now, is about disability and aging services in San Francisco. What would you do, or what would be your vision to make the Richmond District and San Francisco an easier or place to age in community?
Well, I think from the people that I know, you know, I've known a lot of somebody where I work, you know, some of the people who come to our store, you know, they used to come to the store when I was much younger. So, you know, I see a lot of the problems that they have to deal with. And one of the problems that I think that we're all going to have to deal with is being able to afford to stay here in San Francisco. I mean, that's, to me, I think that's probably a big problem. And I think one of the things we have to do is we have to make more units available in the city so that there are more units available for those of us uh, to rent. And that doesn't only affect older people, it affects everybody actually. And one of those things I would do is, you know, Airbnb, you know, I'm a proponent of property rights, but when a lot of these units were put on the market, they were meant to be residential units for people that live and work in the neighborhood. And I don't think, going back to what's fair, I don't think it's fair to allow those units to be rented out on short-term basis as hotels, basically. So the first thing I would do is I would make sure that that we have a stronger policy on short-term rentals. Me personally, I don't think they should be permitted in the city given our current situation. So that's the first thing. Second thing, I think we have a lot of colleges and universities in San Francisco, and you know, for them, they make more money when they bring in students from outside the neighborhood. I understand the economics behind that, but the problem is every student that they bring into San Francisco requires a place to live. And when they do that, they take away more units from those of us who have to rent in the city. So I would require most of the college and universities, if they are bringing in outside students from the immediate area or San Francisco, that they must build or provide housing for those students, so that we are not competing for those same units here in the neighborhood. For safety, you know, you're located on Geary, I'm located on Geary. It's amazing that, you know, in 2020, there are still intersections on Geary that don't have a traffic light. I just think it's absolutely irresponsible for there to be any blocks on Geary without a traffic signal. I mean, this is one of the busiest corridors in the city. So as supervisor, I would make sure that all those traffic lights, one way or another, that they're installed on Geary Street and actually on all of the major corridors in the district. You know, when I was growing up, there was way fewer cars in the Richmond district, and now we've got way more cars and buses and taxis and stuff, but we still have stop signs on some really busy commercial streets like California and Balboa come to mind. Fulton, you know, people use that as a thoroughfare. I can't understand why there's not weren't traffic lights there 30 years ago. I mean, I remember going to Golden Gate Park, and when I was a kid and wondering, why is there no traffic light here? So this is what I'm concerned about. You know what? I know there's a lot of big issues. I know we want to change the world, but you can't change the world if you can't demonstrate that these basic things that we all know need to be taken care of in the neighborhood, that, you know, they're always on the back burner and they're kind of an afterthought. And I don't want it to be an afterthought. I want it to be the first thing that we take care of. And that would be my primary focus, those two things, to help people as we age.
Got it. Sort of related to that, or piggybacking off of that, I mean, some of the traffic signals and anything in San Francisco is expensive, right? But how would you go about funding efforts like that? Or what would be the steps towards fixing those issues that you would see if you were elected?
Okay, so I think that if you redirect certain funds for certain things, or we put back on the ballot and repeal certain things, there is money out there. You know, in San Francisco, the problem is not necessarily money. It is the way that we allocate those funds. So as far as traffic lights, I would try to work it within the current budget, but I think it's so important that if it is not, if I can't get a consensus, I would actually support putting a ballot measure to actually fund specifically that, making sure that all those business corridors have traffic lights. And one of the things is, you know, certain things like this that, you know, are necessary, especially when we don't have funds, you know, sometimes what we have to, you know, we have a lot of requirements, you know, when we want to do something, put a traffic light in, I think the last estimate was like over 100,000 to put in a traffic light at an intersection. Okay.
Yeah.
And I understand that the way that the city is structured and a lot of the laws that the Board of Supervisors have passed, and, you know, to be fair, a lot of laws that we have passed as voters make the cost of doing these kind of projects cost maybe double what they normally cost. So, you know, we might have to look at an exemption for something like certain things like this that are safety related, to maybe, you know, give an exemption in this particular case, so that, you know what, we can really offer it to the best price that we can get, regardless of how big the contractor is or how small the contractor is. Maybe dividing it up by intersection, bidding it by intersection, so that, you know, smaller contractors can bid on these projects and therefore provide a better price. You know, when you go with a really large company and you have a lot of requirements, especially if you look at all the requirements for contracts, for city contracts, many of those disqualify a lot of smaller contractors, and they increase that ultimate cost that we have to pay. For something like this, which I think is necessary for the safety of everybody in the district, I think it's worth exempting certain requirements in order to get this project through at the best price possible and get all those intersections lit up, so that we don't hear about people getting hit by a car. You know, the reason I ran the very first time is, you know, I saw somebody hit by a car in front of me and there's nothing I could have done about it. It was like watching it in slow motion. You see the car roll up and you actually see the car hit the person. You know what? I don't wish that on anybody to see that. And you know what? It's just irresponsible to have elected officials not make that the number one priority. You know, a few years ago, the big issue was whether we had grass or artificial grass at the soccer fields. You know, I got to be honest with you. You know what? What's more important? Making sure that you and your family or your mom and dad can cross the street, or debating on whether whether real grass or artificial grass is more important at the soccer fields. I don't think we have our priorities right sometimes. And you know what, I think that we need somebody who's going to say, hey, you know what, the neighborhood has to be taken care of first. These are the things that we need to do first. And these are going to be the priorities if elected.
Got it. I also just wanted to welcome Sharon. Hi, Sharon. I don't know if you're still there, and see if Sharon had any questions or comments, but I'll come back to her
Hi,
later.
Winston.
Hi.
I was on mute.
Oh, it's okay. That's fine. Do you have any questions or comments for Sherman before I ask him some more?
No, I was just listening to what Sherman has to say, and I really like what I'm hearing, Sherman.
Oh, thank you. Sometimes sometimes it's hard to hear the truth sometimes. So sometimes when you hear it, it sounds good.
Well, there's so much other stuff going around that sometimes hearing truth is really refreshing.
Yes, I understand that. I understand that truth is a very hard thing to find sometimes these days. And very unfortunate, unfortunately.
It's very hard to find these days.
But thank you very much, though. I thank you.
Keep talking and I'll keep listening.
All right.
Thank you, Winston.
Oh, of course. Another one of the questions that we're asking is, how would you support and partner with community-based organizations, senior centers, and other nonprofits if you were elected?
Okay, so one of the reasons why I'm very strong on having an office here in the neighborhood is because I think we need a place where we can all coordinate, so that, people that provide services like yourselves and people who need services, we can have one place where everybody can kind of meet, and people in the neighborhood know that if they go there, they can get directed to the right services. We can put people together that need those services, because a lot of times, where I work, there's a lot of seniors, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of them, aren't aware of some of the services that are available to them through the city and through a lot of the nonprofit groups here in the neighborhood. And so one of the reasons I want to have that office is so that anybody can drop in. We can have maybe a section for each of the groups in the neighborhood. And I want to have a staff member there who understands City Hall, understands all of the departments, and understands the nonprofit groups, so that we can kind of coordinate our efforts, so that we're not duplicating the same things. Because if we duplicate the same things, that doesn't really help the neighborhood. But if we can all kind of team up and we all know what everybody can offer, maybe we can use the resources a little bit more efficiently instead of duplicating some of the services that the city offers.
Got it. The next question is, what would be, if elected, your plan or vision for San Francisco's COVID-19 response in 2021?
In 2020, okay.
Yeah, because I mean,
All
that's
right,
when
well,
you'd
we'll start in 2020 because we're not
Sure.
there yet. But
well, you'd be sworn in January, if I remember.
Well, that's true. Honestly, I'm not sure what the stand is on my colleagues who are running, but from a business standpoint, I'm going to be upfront with everybody. I know it's not going to be the popular thing to say, but if we're going to make it through the next year and a half, it really is going to take the cooperation of everybody in the neighborhood and everybody in San Francisco. We really have to enforce the mask wearing in San Francisco. It is the number one way that we can keep our numbers down. From a business standpoint, if those numbers go up, the state will shut down a lot of the businesses that have been allowed to open up in San Francisco. Okay, so I think people are not being realistic that if we don't enforce the mask wearing in the city, I mean, we have a pretty good voluntary use of the mask. But if you go around to other areas in the city, you can see a lot of areas where people are just roaming around and they're hanging out with their friends, and even coworkers are hanging out and they're not wearing a mask. And I think we need to have a strong we need to have a strong message and a unified message from City Hall that in order to keep the economy going, in order to keep people at work, and in order to keep our older people safe, we must enforce this, enforce mask wearing. And I think by saying that we're gonna have a fine or a penalty, we show people, we demonstrate people how important it is. Having a requirement and not having any enforcement, or saying, well, you know, please do it. You know, those of us who are thinking of others and want to make sure that we get out of this, we're going to wear a mask. But what we need to do is we need to get the message to those people who choose not to wear a mask or don't want to wear a mask, to get them into the system and start having a mask. You know, don't necessarily have to give people a ticket, but we need to make sure that we're out there telling people, hey, you know what, if you're going to be out in public, you're going to be around other people, you got to wear a mask. And I think we need to actually, we need to have our health department have some people go into businesses. You know, part of my job is I do pickups at other businesses in the city. And, you know, I've visited a couple of businesses when I'm working or not working. And, you know, people wear the mask when a member of the public comes in. Okay. But when the coworkers are hanging out, they pull their mask down. Hey guys, that doesn't work. Okay? We've all done it, I know, but that doesn't work. Okay. Because what happens is if one of your coworkers is sick, then you get infected, you bring that home. And now with things are opening up, we need people to understand how this thing is transmitted, and we need everybody to participate 100% of the time. You can't let your guard down even a little bit. You know, I was hanging out with my friends, and, you know, I told my friend, hey, dude, you shouldn't be coming out without a mask. He goes, well, you're not infected. I said, yeah, but you can't assume that. You know, my policy is you assume everybody is infected, and that's how you keep everybody safe. And, you know, I'm very disappointed. I see a lot of our law enforcement officers and actually even firefighters, you know, they're traveling around in vehicles together and they're not wearing a mask. You know, they are the ones that need to show the example to us that you are always wearing a mask. If you're in a police car with your partner and you're not wearing a mask, that is the same thing as any one of us talking to our friends out on the street not wearing a mask. You have to wear the mask 100% of the time. I know it's uncomfortable. You know, I've gotten kind of used to using it now because, you know, we have a zero tolerance policy at our store. You know, everybody wears a mask. If you need to take your mask off, you got to go outside. You cannot do it in the store. And, you know, it's there to keep our staff members safe. It's there to keep our staff members safe. And ultimately, it's there to keep the entire community safe. So we all need to get on the page. I wish our supervisors and our mayor would take an even stronger stand on this, because I think if we don't, it may come back to bite us in 2021.
Got it. Anything else on that, the approach to how San Francisco is handling the pandemic?
I think
mask enforcement's the big one.
Yeah, I think the mayor's done a pretty good job about getting the shared spaces out for restaurants so that they can operate outside. I am concerned, what are they going to do when the weather turns around? And I know they're allowing people to operate indoors at 25% capacity. I'll be honest with you, I'll be honest with you, I love eating at restaurants, and I used to eat at a restaurant a lot. We still get takeout, but, you know, I'll be honest with you, I don't really feel comfortable the way tables are, you know, 6 feet apart, nobody's wearing a mask. I'm not comfortable with that outdoors. So I wouldn't be comfortable with it indoors either, because, you know, my understanding and the way that we approach it at the store I work with, you know what, if you are inside and you are not wearing a mask, that means you are expelling the particles into the air. So those particles are in the air inside, even after you leave. So, you know, I'm not really convinced if you're inside and you're not wearing a mask that protects people. I don't know if they've done the science to see how well it's transmitted indoors. It's at 25%, it's less likely, but all you need to do is get a couple of spikes in a few places and a couple of people that are really infectious, and our infectious rate could go up really drastically, really quick. So I would, I think if I think using the outdoor space probably is the best alternative currently, as far as restaurants go. And I think that, like I said, people in parks and stuff like that, I think it's okay to open all that stuff back up. But I think we need to make sure everybody understands, just like I said, when coworkers are working together, you kind of lower your guard and you get back to normal the way things used to be. I think we need to keep imparting upon people and not let them forget that, the disease hasn't gone away. It is still here. It can resurge at any time. And I'll remind people, it's not just our community of people here in San Francisco. A lot of the hotels are opening up. We're going to have a lot of people from outside San Francisco, possibly a lot of people from areas of the country that have much higher infectious rates. And when they come here, there's a greater chance that they can start spreading that within our communities here in San Francisco. So it does require us to be even more vigilant now that more people from outside San Francisco are going to be coming here into San Francisco to shop, to stay, to visit the city.
Got it. Okay. Going back to the survey that we got here, a few of the top areas of interest we've already touched on: aging and aging services. What would be your approach to addressing homelessness in the Richmond and beyond?
Yeah, so my approach to homelessness is a little bit different than most of the candidates, and it's based on a couple of court rulings and what I've heard has happened in Oakland. So in Oakland, the courts have told them that, you can't tell people they can't be out on the street if you don't have a place for them to be. Okay, so my approach is, the first priority is for us to have a place for them to be. My suggestion would be to use city property, maybe like parking garages, and maybe partition them off so that you've got like separate areas, and allow people to temporarily stay there so that we have a place for them to go to meet the court requirements. And then we tell people you can't be out on the street. And then once they're there, we quickly move to get them the services that they need, whether it's mental services, addiction services, or if they need to transition to a home. But I think we need to say, first of all, that you can't be out on the street. We can't get a handle on the situation when we're spreading our resources thin all over the city, trying to accommodate people that want to have tents all over the city. It's just not going to work. We need to rally all of our services in one location, number one. That's why I suggested the parking garages, because they're owned by the city. We don't need to rely on any state or federal money to do it. It's a city asset. We can use it right now to get a handle on the situation right away. And then what I would do is, once we do that, once we have the place for them to stay, we can actually go ahead and tell people, you know what, we have a place for you to go. We have a place for you that'll provide services to you, but you cannot be out on public streets anymore. And I think, it's nice to try to get people to go get services with a carrot, but sometimes, you know what, you have to be more forceful. And we've been asking people to get help now for, God, since I was a kid, okay? Since I've been hearing about this issue since I was in middle school and high school. The problem is the issue used to be downtown, okay? And now the issue is all over the city. If we had dealt with it when it was downtown, we wouldn't be in the situation we are in today. Sometimes as elected officials, sometimes you have to take a tough stand in order to help people and help the community. And I feel that a lot of the people that have been running for supervisor, they just don't want to take a strong stand, and it has devolved to the current situation that we are in today.
Got it. What about healthcare? Any particular policies or issues that you're passionate about that would relate to healthcare and mental health services?
Yeah. So I think everybody deserves healthcare, number one. I believe healthcare is kind of like education. The government, uh, the government needs to provide a baseline level for every single citizen. We provide a baseline education for everybody. And I don't think healthcare is any different. Um, Healthcare is kind of in flux now because we don't know what's going to happen with the Affordable Care Act. I do think it is necessary. Um, Depending on how that all pans out, I wouldn't be opposed to having a local healthcare initiative for anybody who lives and works in San Francisco, where San Francisco buys the healthcare, and we raise taxes to pay for it. Because either way, we are going to pay for it. If everybody does not have healthcare, it doesn't mean that the taxpayers don't pay for it. It just means that we pay 2 or 3 times that amount for that healthcare that is provided. Because what happens is they end up at our healthcare centers or our emergency rooms, and that requires maybe 2-3 times as much funds to cover healthcare in that manner than it would if we just provided healthcare, basic healthcare for all our residents in San Francisco.
Got it. Let me go back here. Well, I'm going to check in real quick. Sharon, any questions or comments you want to share with Sherman?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I have 1 or 2 more things I could ask you about, Sherman, but is there anything else you want to share or want us to know about you?
I don't want to change the world, okay? But I do want to show people that government can work for them. I believe it can work. Government can do a good job if people elect people to represent them that are going to focus on those things that they can focus on. A lot of times our supervisors or people who are running for supervisor, they tell us about all these grand things that they want to do. And the realistic thing is, a lot of those things you can't just do as supervisor. You can't snap your finger and it can't just happen. But a lot of the things that I'm asking for, clean streets, making sure that traffic lights are installed, making sure that trash is removed, making sure that trash cans are emptied. These are services that the city already provides. We have people, we have departments that already do this. The problem is coordination. The problem is oversight from the Board of Supervisors and the mayor on these departments to make sure that they're actually taking care of these things. I don't know if you've noticed, I'm sure we've all noticed the overflowing trash cans in the neighborhood. How hard is it to make sure that trash cans are empty? We're not going to the moon. We're trying to make sure that the streets are clean and make sure trash cans are emptied. So I'll be honest with you, no matter how smart the supervisors that you elect are, if you can't prioritize your stuff to say, hey, you know what? How come we can't get the trash can on the corner emptied in a timely manner so that it doesn't all spill on the floor and then blow all over the street? To most people that says, government doesn't care and they're not going to do anything either way. And I want to change that. I want people to believe that, if we work together, government can improve each of our lives here in the neighborhood and can make the neighborhood the best it can be. And as supervisor, I want to demonstrate to not only the people in our district, but to other districts that they too, if they change the focus on the requirements of the person that they want to choose to represent them, things will change. Candidates will not change on their own. It will require the people to change their view of their expectations of what they want done first. And my hope is that people will say, hey, you know what? These are, they're right. These are the things that need to be taken care of first. There are a lot of things that need to be done in the neighborhood or to change things. But you need to demonstrate that you can take care of these basic things first before you tell us you want to tackle some other big project. Because if you can't handle a small project, what is there to say that you're going to be able to handle a huge project that now you want to embark upon? And so for me, it's important to give people faith that government is on their side. is trying to help them and will use the resources wisely that we have available to us.
Got it. All right. That wraps up most of our questions and subject areas. I'm going to check in with Sharon one more time, see if there's anything else she's thinking about. I'm just trying to be an inviting facilitator.
Well, I came in late, so I did not hear what Sherman said about his background, that and how he feels his background has prepared him to run for supervisor to represent us.
Yeah, we got time. Sherman, do you want to quickly
sure.
recap that?
I'll go over it again. So, you know, the Board of Supervisors' job is basically to represent the people here in the neighborhood, you know, find out what's going on at City Hall, come back and report to the people here in the neighborhood what's being proposed at City Hall and how it will affect them in a good way or a bad way, and what my opinion on it is after I hear all the information. So I don't believe you necessarily need to have any prior experience to do that. You know, we have city councils that, you know, in other parts of the state that are volunteer, you know, regular neighbors just like yourself will come in and they'll say, okay, you know, I'll sit on the city council and, you know, we'll listen to the issues. We'll figure out, do we need a traffic light at this intersection? You know, does it make sense? Do we have the money to do it? And then, okay, yeah, we'll do it. You know, I don't see San Francisco as any different. I think that for good or bad, I think we've kind of made it, the situation where it is so complex that, you know, that we feel that unless you're part of that little club, that it's, you know, nobody else can sit there. And I don't believe that. You know, if you believe in democracy, you know, we don't hold that only a small elite group can manage the affairs of San Francisco. You know, I'm a firm believer that anybody listening to me would be absolutely fine sitting on the Board of Supervisors. You know, if we all can sit on a jury and decide somebody's fate to take away their rights to go to jail, I mean, take away their rights and send them to prison, I think any one of us can listen to the facts on a lot of these issues and come up with a fair decision. I'm just not a firm believer that you need to have a certain class of person to hold these positions, especially not a local issue like the Board of Supervisors.
Got it.
I'm sure
Sharon,
I
any
don't know if that
follow-ups?
answered your question.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Oh,
Did you want me to elaborate on anything else?
Oh.
You want to explain anything else about that?
well, the other thing I have a question about, and maybe you've already said something about it, and that is the small businesses that are closing up in the Richmond District. How do you plan to help the ones that are still barely hanging on, and how would you go about attracting more small businesses to come to the Richmond District?
Okay, so that question has a couple of different aspects to it. Okay, as you probably know, there were a lot of stores in the district that were vacant before the pandemic. Okay, the pandemic has kind of exacerbated that situation quite a bit. But so let's step back for a little bit. I believe that a lot of people in the district forget that prior supervisors in our district and us as voters, we have passed laws and legislation that prohibit a lot of businesses from opening up in the Richmond District. Okay, so when we exclude a big segment of businesses that are permitted to open up in the district, we're only left with a smaller pool of viable candidates that can move into a lot of these places in the district or in San Francisco. You know, this is not just a district issue; it's a citywide issue. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is the city makes it very difficult through the requirements that we have for a business to open up in San Francisco. So I think streamlining the streamlining the process in order to open and get a business approved in San Francisco will go a long way to allowing more businesses to say, okay, you know what, I'll locate in San Francisco. So that is something the city can do to help businesses. So a couple of things the city can't do to help businesses is, the voters passed a law a few years ago requiring a minimum wage to go into effect, and that adjusts every year. Well, I'm a firm believer that, we should pay people as much as possible, but the realities are that you can only pass so much of that cost on to your product. And in San Francisco, because of the cost of labor is so high, there are a lot of businesses that opt, say, you know what, it's not going to work for me. The numbers don't work out to operate in San Francisco. I used to go to a restaurant just a few blocks from me on Clement Street, and the restaurant wasn't losing money, okay, but she had other restaurants in other cities in the Bay Area, and the implication was that in San Francisco it is just so difficult to operate, and certainly more expensive to operate, that it just did not work for her as far as numbers go to keep the store open. So she wasn't losing money, but she didn't think it was worth it to keep that store open going in San Francisco. And that's true with a lot of issues. There's a couple of ballot initiatives on the ballot in this election. And a lot of those ballot measures will discourage more businesses from operating in San Francisco. There's one, I think, that adds a tax if the CEO of a company makes more than a certain amount than the lowest paid employee. Look, you know what, I'm a firm believer that, we should try to have employees get paid as much as possible. But this is not a good solution, because what will happen is you'll have companies subject to that tax, and they're going to run the numbers, and they're going to say, okay, based on these numbers, does it make sense to operate in San Francisco? And if it doesn't, what they're going to say is, well, you know what, we can move to Serramonte, okay, or we can move to Oakland or some other city or community that does not impose that tax, or they can go online. So you see, some of the reasons that those stores are empty are not necessarily not all the business's fault. It's a combination of a lot of different things that at some point they pile up, and then you say, hey, the numbers don't work. As somebody who works at a store in San Francisco, and a lot of times I have to juggle these numbers, at some point there's a tipping point. For every business, there's a tipping point where, regulation comes in, and you say, okay, that's going to cost me, X. Okay, well, I can juggle that around, no big deal. Then something else comes in, and you say, okay, well, yeah, we can juggle that. But pretty soon you start adding those things, and they may not be a lot. They might be a small portion, but they compound on themselves. So if you have 3 or 4 of these requirements that the city now requires, let's say towards employees, well, that increases the cost. When you add those up, it adds a lot to the cost of labor, and that determines of how many people that you can ultimately hire. And if you can't provide the service, or you can't pass that cost on to the consumers also have a finite amount that they're willing to pay. At some point, consumers say, well, you know what, that's too expensive for me. I can't afford that. And then your level of customers drops, your income drops, and then pretty soon now you're in an imbalance and you can't make the numbers work. And that's what a lot of businesses are facing. And a lot during the current situation, that's compounded with the COVID-19 situation. A lot of businesses that were right at the threshold, a lot of those businesses are saying, hey, you know what? The numbers were so close before, and now I'm going to operate at 25%. There's no way I can make those numbers work. And it's a business decision, and they make the decision that it's just not going to work for them. So I think if there's a silver lining to the situation, the only silver lining I can say is that because there are so many places that are available now, and property values are going down, I think you will see that the asking rent on a lot of these vacant storefronts, the owners are going to drop the rents on a lot of those places. And that will allow an opportunity for other smaller businesses that are just starting out to say, oh, you know what, I can take a risk on that and I can give it a try now because the rents have come down. That might be a silver lining to the situation. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
One follow-up on that before we wrap up, Sherman, is you said there were certain businesses that are prohibited, or the city prohibits. What would you want to remove a prohibition from to permit instead?
So when Supervisor Eric Marr was supervisor, I believe he passed a moratorium on banks. I'm not sure if that's still in effect, but I think banks need a conditional use hearing in order to open in the city. Certainly, any chain store needs to have a conditional hearing in order to open up in the neighborhood. So there's a lot of smaller stores that by the city definition are considered chains because they have, I don't know what the benchmark is, either 3 or 5 locations. They're considered chain stores. So there's an extra hoop that they have to jump through in order to open up in the neighborhood. So those are 2 examples. I think there's a moratorium on restaurants on Clement Street, if I'm not mistaken, if wasn't already a restaurant. So there's a couple of these that are around there. The commercial, what do you call it? The requirement that prohibits more than one location. I think that's probably a problem because there are a lot of smaller stores that have multiple location. One comes to mind is I think it's Ike's Sub. They've got
the sandwich spot. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe I read about them. They would be considered a chain store because they've got more than a few locations. So in order to open up in San Francisco, they would have to go through a lengthy, much more rigorous hearing process to open up in San Francisco. And like I said, businesses, they do a cost benefit analysis. And a lot of times, if it looks like it's going to be too difficult, or it looks like that they're going to get a hindrance from the neighborhood or from the supervisor, then they're going to go, well, it's going to cost us X to try, and then we may not even get to open up. Is it really worth the effort? And that's really what it comes down to. Is it worth the effort to try to open up in San Francisco or in the district when there's a chance that neighbors will come out and say, well, we don't like that kind of business. What comes to mind is we have the High Five gym location that was on Geary and 18th.
Oh yeah.
18th.
By the banks and all that stuff.
Yeah, they shut down. But originally, I believe it was a pet store that wanted to open up there. And Supervisor Marr at the time, he put the brakes on that one because he didn't feel that was appropriate. I think we need to have a consistent policy. We don't want certain neighbors or your elected official picking and choosing what kind of businesses can and cannot open. He put a lot of weight between killing the project for the pet store that wanted to open up on 18th, but he didn't have any problem with the other chain stores that opened up in the neighborhood, which Target, and then we had there was another store that opened up at the time also that was a chain store. So I don't think your supervisor should get involved in picking and choosing what stores can and cannot open if you want to have a vibrant shopping district where you can fill up all those stores. The minute you start picking and choosing and businesses feel that it's going to be a crapshoot whether they can open up, you're basically telling them, hey, you know what, you might want to try, but you know what, you're going to have to jump through all these hoops and it may not work. It's sending the wrong message if you ask me.
Got it. Okay, I think we're just about out of time. So Sherman, it'll take a little bit, but this recording will get uploaded. I'll put it on our Senior Center's YouTube account, and I'll make sure you get a copy of it too.
So after they watch it, if they have additional questions, you know, the email that I gave you, that's my email. You can share that email. I always answer questions, even after the election's over. If you have a question, you know what? I live in the neighborhood. I don't have any problem talking to my neighbors. If you have a question, you can email me. You can go to my website, which is DSilva2020.com. My cell phone number is there. My email is there. Feel free to contact me if you want me to elaborate on any of these issues, or if you have information that, you know, might change my mind. You know, like I said, nothing is etched in stone. If additional information is presented and it makes sense and I can verify it, you know, I might change my mind. But the views that I presented today, that's pretty much based on my experience living in the neighborhood. That's where I stand on most issues.
Got it. I'll be sure to then put that information, your contact and website, in the like video description, so people can easily find that.
Name, email, phone number, no problem. I answer my own phone. I don't have any problem. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, Sherman, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time.
All right. It's a pleasure meeting you, and pleasure talking to all of your members.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sharon. Bye, Sherman.
Bye, Sharon. Thank you, Winston.